Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul. I can't believe this is real, guys. The audience goes crazy. The wait is finally over. Here we go.
Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. If someone had told you about this matchup a couple of years ago, you would have laughed it off. However, it was just a few years ago that Mike Tyson helped launch Jake's boxing career into the mainstream on the event where Tyson fought Roy Jones Jr. Jake fought against Nate Robinson. The popularity of Mike's name brought attention to Paul's fight, and now just a few years later, Jake has fought multiple times in the ring and is ready to face his most intimidating opponent yet. Or could Tyson turn out to be his easiest fight? To make sense of this unusual matchup, let's first remember what made a young Mike Tyson so special. Then we'll analyze his last fight against Roy Jones Jr. and compare that performance to Jake Paul's most recent 2 fights. After that, we'll have a clearer idea of who will come out on top in this showdown. Prime Mike Tyson. Mike is known for his brutal combinations, body head work. It's impossible to imitate so many combinations with pad work. So his coach Cass D'Amato created a boxing bag called the Willie Machine. The point of it was to number the hits and perform the combinations just by listening to the numbers. In total, there were 8 punches in Cass's school, and each of them had its own number: 1 left hook, 2 right hook, or straight, 3 uppercut with the left hand, 4 uppercut with the right hand, 5 hook to the body with the left hand, 6 hook to the body with the right hand, 7 jab, 8 jab to the body. The coach called a certain set of numbers, for example 5, 3, 2, and Mike immediately performed the combination first on the bag and then on his opponents. But to perform such complex and long combinations, you need good footwork. Shifting to the side in the performance of the Iron Mike has become a real art. His arsenal had a huge number of ways to reduce the distance pendulum, where he relied more on his legs than the rotation of the body dives, where the legs were also used in the first place explosions, with a change of stance pivots, aside steps, and many other tools in Tyson's footwork. Thanks to this, he could play hide and seek with opponents who did not see him, but could feel the weight of his punches, after which Mike again hid behind them, cutting the corner, despite the huge number of movements, cutting corners and headwork. The essence of Tyson's style was the most severe pressure, not a step back, to implement such a capacious energy consuming style. In terms of technique, you need strong focus and zero doubts, because at such speeds, the split seconds determine the outcome of the fight. D'Amato understood this, so he did everything to make Mike never doubt himself, and he used fear of his opponent as fuel for training, after which fear turned into confidence when he went out to the ring, which made the opponent feel fear. But even a seemingly perfect machine like Mike Tyson has flaws. His PR team skillfully conceals these to this day, leading many to believe that Tyson's losses were solely due to losing discipline and motivation. However, this isn't entirely true, cause D'Amato wasn't just any trainer. He coached 2 of the youngest heavyweight champions, both of whom had a similar fighting style. And therein lies the problem. The Pabu style is incredibly energy intensive and works well as long as the opponent is frightened and shocked. But once the opponent isn't afraid and the fighter using the style loses some energy, the whole style begins to fall apart. This is why Mike Tyson lost in the same way every time. Everyone who defeated him wasn't scared of him, which allowed them to catch their breath during the fight and focus on constantly working the jab. This kept Tyson at a distance. And when Mike got angry and tried to close the distance to his preferred fighting range, he would get caught in a clinch where his arms would get worn out and he'd grow frustrated. This is how he lost to Douglas Lewis, and it's why he headbutted Holyfield and then bit his ear off. He just couldn't find a solution to constant clinches and long jabs. You're likely to quote Tyson's famous L in the comments. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. But the problem is that plan worked every time, and it even worked many years later against Roy Jones. Tyson versus Jones. Tyson starts the fight very actively, making it seem like vintage Mike is back. However, there's a moment after his double jab that hints something isn't quite right. Mike doesn't continue pressing forward like he used to. Instead, he pauses and just follows Roy around. But after This moment, Tyson redeems himself by taking the center of the ring and pressing Roy against the ropes, cutting off his movement. Yet as soon as Mike steps past the center, he makes the same mistake again. He freezes and lets Roy go. To Tyson's credit, he quickly finds his timing. Despite years out of the ring, Roy throws a jab. Mike slips inside it and counters in his classic style another counter. But this time, Mike slips to the outside and lands a body hook. But then, he forgets to control the center, chases after Jones, and ends up freezing again, allowing Roy to escape. This shows the main problem with Mike Tyson's style that has plagued him throughout his career. The clinch. He always struggled to avoid clinches, worked poorly within them, and couldn't escape them effectively due to his height. It was his problems with clinching that cost him every fight he lost. Jones changes tactics, working quick jabs, and then retreating from Tyson's range. This strategy works well because due to his age, Mike couldn't counter quickly enough. And when he tried to step out of the center of the ring, he got caught in Roy's clinch. Just when it seemed like Roy had found an answer to Mike's style, Tyson throws a feint in the second round, making Jones move to his right, and Mike catches him with a hook. Instead of chasing Roy as he did in the first round, Mike made Jones run straight into his hook, but again it ended in a clinch. It's worth noting that for the past 10 years or more, this has been Roy Jones's fighting style. Having lost speed and reflexes, he learned to land a punch and then immediately tee up his opponent in a clinch, or when the opponent finished a combination, he would catch them in a clinch right away. Tyson slips forward, but since he stayed in place, Roy Jones got confused. Mike easily gave up the hand Roy was controlling him with and attacked with his free hand. Essentially, the main problem with this version of Tyson is his inability to compensate for the lack of speed with ring control and distance management. Because when he moves correctly at the right distance, Jones poses no threat to him. For example, in this segment of the fight, Tyson feints Jones, making him prepare to counter with a jab, but Mike anticipates this and throws his jab while lunging forward, then uses proper footwork to corner Roy and unloads combinations for the perfect attack. He needed to step out of the fighting range, but because he froze, Roy safely entered the clinch. 8052. Mike repeats the same setup, but this time when it comes to the clinch, he takes the overhooks first and controls Jones's hands. In summary, we can only admire Tyson's physical abilities at his age, but his flaw in clinch work can still be exploited if a lighter and more battered Roy Jones could tie him up in a clinch. Then a younger and stronger Jake Paul certainly can. Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. If someone had told you about this matchup a couple of years ago, you would have laughed it off. However, it was just a few years ago that Mike Tyson helped launch Jake's boxing career into the mainstream. On the event where Tyson fought Roy Jones Jr., Jake fought against Nate Robinson. The popularity of Mike's name brought attention to Paul's fight, and now just a few years later, Jake has fought multiple times in the ring and is ready to face his most intimidating opponent yet. Or could Tyson turn out to be his easiest fight? To make sense of this unusual matchup, let's first remember what made a young Mike Tyson so special. Then we'll analyze his last fight against Roy Jones Jr. and compare that performance to Jake Paul's most recent 2 fights. After that, we'll have a clearer idea of who will come out on top in this showdown. Prime Mike Tyson.